This is my money, and I didn't take it. Jessica Williams, 13, stood she begged, her voice shaking with desperation, while trembling at the customer service desk. But when Sharon Mitchell, the manager, looked down at the young black girl like, "You," her face contorted in disdain. "I doubt that you robbed someone of their eyes with this much money." Flooded with tears as the embarrassment struck her. This should have been an easy situation. Sharon scoffed as she pleaded, "Please let me call my mom," as she was attempting to create her first bank account. "I won't fall for your sob narrative. Reserve it for the cops." Cold satisfaction. She picked up the phone without thinking and said, "Yes, I need cops right away. I have a young thief trying to deposit money that had been stolen." But Sharon Mitchell was unaware that she had just committed the worst error of her professional life, because she would learn Jessica's mother's identity in less than an hour. And when she did, her entire life would change. Came pouring down. And what transpired revealed a secret in addition to Sharon's startling prejudice. If you oppose bigotry and discrimination, click the subscribe button. It was so strong that it altered everything before we even started the tale. Click the yes button and leave a comment letting us know where you're viewing from, and we'll respond right away. Jessica Williams, 13, virtually jumped with joy as she left the city on Tuesday afternoon. Today is not just any day for the bus downtown. It's the on this day. Jessica finally shows her mother that she is mature enough to manage her own finances after weeks of preparing for this moment. She had studied various account kinds online and rehearsed her response, tough bank employee, and even practiced entering through those glass doors with assurance. But this wasn't just a bootstablishing. A checking account was a sign of adulthood, independence, and taking. Jessica Williams' first significant foray into adulthood had place in a society that most her early years were spent in a home tucked away in the Ashay. Went to the exclusive Hillrist estates, which had well-kept lawns that extended as far as the eye could see. Her largest obstacle was Westfield Preparatory Academy, where tuition was greater than most people's yearly salaries. Jessica was worried about keeping her flawless 4.0 GPA. But this is what made her like other affluent children. She was unaware of her family's affluence. Her mother had purposefully indoctrinated her to think they were just comfortably. Jessica shopped at regular stores and rode the bus to school rather than being driven in a fancy automobile. Not high-end stores. She diligently earned her allowance by completing chores and keeping up her grades. Dr. Angela Rodriguez Williams has discovered that building a normal life was no accident. She recalled being frequently reminded as a youngster that having a lot of money could be both a blessing and a burden. As the heir to the Rodriguez financial dynasty, he was observed, photographed, and evaluated. Angela decided to raise Jessica after she was born, a choice that would influence her daughter's whole perspective. To appreciate the importance of diligence and modesty. Before she was even taught a actual strength of the family, when Jessica entered First National Bank, she brought an envelope with $800 in birthday money with her that afternoon. Her grandma Rodriguez gave her money, which symbolized months of diligence. She kept her savings account and birthday presents in her rucksack. Statements displaying $1,200 accrued from holiday presents, allowances, and modest. Jessica felt quite fortunate to get this honor given her academic accomplishments. Family. The bank lobby was bustling with the usual afternoon hum, and it was pocket change. Activated business people rushed between teller windows in immaculate outfits. In the VIP area, elderly patrons waited patiently as the gentle hum of the air was filled with money discussions. So Jessica took a deep breath and straightened. Wearing her school uniform and walked confidently up to the customer service counter, having never been treated as if she were not appreciated and revered. Jessica approached the first teller window, smiling broadly, holding her rucksack full of papers and her birthday money envelope. Jennifer Adams Customer Service was written on the nameplate on the counter. Representative. Jennifer's demeanor instantly changed as she raised her head from her computer screen. Her kind grin vanished as she noticed the young black girl standing at her window and was replaced with a suspicious and disgusted expression. Jennifer asked her icily, "What do you want?" "Hello, good," she said in a hostile tone, glancing up and down at Jessica as if she were something disagreeable. Day. Jessica responded pleasantly, attempting to have a cheery disposition in spite of "I'd like to open my first checking account, please. I'm really excited about this." Jennifer was blatantly nasty. Chuckle harshly. "Are you serious? This is a legitimate bank, not some." Jessica's grin started to wane. "Since we don't just give out accounts to any child that enters the community center." 13, and I've been saving all the necessary paperwork for this. 13, Jennifer cut in with a snarl. "And I assume you have money from around here. Teenagers like you often get money by stealing from others or selling drugs. Kids like me, who attend Westfield Prep, don't understand why." Jessica felt like she had been smacked. "This is birthday money." My grandma remarked. "I'm positive it's Jennifer," in a condescending tone. "Westfield Prep, you probably stole that uniform as well." and I am fully aware of the type of area you hail from, one that does not send children to him. Currently phoning my boss to handle this matter at posh schools. Jennifer grabbed up her phone and phoned. She knows exactly how to handle people like you. With a theatrical flourish, Sharon, you must go straight to window 3. I've haved one of those city youngsters here, attempting to con us out of suspicious money. Yes, the same kind we discussed an hour within minutes of the staff meeting. She becomes combative and causes a disturbance, according to bank manager Sharon. At the teller window, Mitchell showed up prepared to seize control of what Jennifer had characterized as an ordinary urban troublemaker scenario. She glanced up from her documents and instantly focused on Jessica A's. Something icy and cunning appeared on the face of a young black girl standing in her immaculate foyer. She never displayed the kind, businesslike grin she usually saved for clients. Young woman, shouldn't you be in school? Sharon's initial remarks were accusatory and brimming with distrust rather than friendly or helpful. Jessica blinked, surprised by the stern tone, but she remained courteous. Oh. My parents and school have given me permission to leave early. She took a written permission slip from her school, out of her backpack, especially for this visit. Counselor. But Sharon didn't even look at the paper. Instead, she was focused on the when Jessica opened the package she had set on the counter. She saw the neatly folded money that Sharon's was even more serious, saying, "That's a lot of money for someone your age. Where did you understand?" The inquiry seemed more like an interrogation than a customer service call, and Jessica felt a twinge of excitement. With a knot in her stomach, wondering why this lady was acting so aggressively in her protected before my grandmother's birthday. Money and some savings. The world's financial stability had never been questioned. Sharon's laugh was piercing, and I wanted to deposit everything I've been keeping at home when I established my bank account. Don't think it funny that 13-year-olds don't usually receive $800 from their grandma. The charge struck Jessica like a physical blow she had never experienced before in cash. Sincerity questions have never before been met with such blatant suspicion. Yet it's true that she consistently provides generous. I can show you the note she wrote with it as a birthday present. Jessica fumbled in her backpack and created a lovely birthday card in her grandmother's handwriting, but Sharon ignored it and waved it away. These could all be fake, Sharon said dismissively. Anyone can write a card. Pointing at Jessica's meticulously prepared paperwork while across town in a shining Dr. Angela Rodriguez Williams sat in the boardroom of a 40-story office skyscraper. Of Williams Financial Group was totally oblivious to the fact that her daughter's safe haven was starting to fall apart. Was in the midst of a meeting with 5 other executives about a significant purchase deal, which included Angela had spent 13 years constructing and was able to move millions of dollars with ease. In corporate circles, she was referred to as Angela Rodriguez, the smart CEO who had the ideal double life. Taken her family's prosperous financial business and extended it into new financial magazine markets. Highlighted her on their covers, and business schools provided case studies on her creative tactics, and rivals admired her astute judgment. But in her private life, she was just Jessica's mother, Angela Williams, who drove the carpool, went to parent-teacher conferences, while and fretted over typical adolescent issues like friendships and schoolwork. She went by her marital name. Socially lived in a lovely, understated house, and had visited going above and beyond to keep Jessica's upbringing as normal as possible. And dual identities served as a means of safety as well as privacy. Recalled the demands of being raised as banking royalty and the ongoing scrutinous way she was treated differently by others once they found out her last name. She was convinced that Jessica would grow prior to studying. She had her own ideals, character, and self about the enormous authority and duty that would eventually belong to her back at the bank. Jessica was realizing she was undergoing cultural shock. She made another attempt to demonstrate Sharon her birth certificate, school ID, and savings account statements from the same bank. But look, sweetie, Sharon began in a voice that only grew more hostile. With a tone of contempt, I've been in situations where girls like you don't just walk around with this kind of money. The remark struck Jessica like a smack in the face. I have been banking for 20 years, and I recognize suspicious activity when I see it. She had heard such phrases in news articles and movies before, but she had never thought they would be aimed at her because she had been shielded from the terrible reality of racial discrimination. Bias. And now it was fully affecting her. Would you kindly assist me in opening an account? Jessica inquired, her tone faltering due to bewilderment and pain. Entered, I don't know why you're treating me so badly. All I want to do is bank here like everyone else. But Sharon had already made her choice. Her biases, her grudges, and her newfound authority had blended into a poisonous concoction that made her oblivious to everything save her own prejudices. Therefore, I don't believe this money is desperation started to creep in. And I'm not going to be a part of whatever plan you're running. It's probably stolen. Jessica's voice isn't stolen. So please call my mother so she can. The name of the person who banks here is Angela Williams. Sharon's nice attempt But until we find out where you actually obtained this money, I don't know why you're phoning anyone. The people you're working with brought you in because they believed a child would be less suspicious. Sharon was unaware that she could have easily recorded Angela Williams on the bank's computer system. Would have found, as Jessica stated, a small checking account owned by a local parent, but Sharon, as Jessica stood there, she never bothered to check since she had already made up her mind, feeling smaller and more powerless every minute. Other bank patrons started to notice. Some appeared uneasy with Sharon's blatantly nasty behavior of a little child, but no one raised their voice at that time. Jessica was taught an agonizing lesson about how people could tolerate injustice in the world. Jessica Williams stood here, the irony overwhelming without anybody stepping in. The daughter of one of the most influential business executives and granddaughter of the Rodriguez banking family, the nation being treated like a criminal at a bank that was established and maintained with the support of her family's funds decades. But Sharon Mitchell was unaware of the fact that she was shielding the bank from a teenage con artist who was actually about to ruin her own career by focusing on the incorrect family, as seen by the conflict in that bank lobby. Escalated further, Jessica saw that, for the first time in her life, her meticulously built world was starting to fall apart, was going through what millions of other young Black Americans go through on a daily basis: the presumption of guilt, doubts about their validity, and the tiresome weight of needing to demonstrate their value. To nobody at that bank knew that in a matter of minutes, those who had already determined they were unworthy, Jessica's mother was going to get a text message that will completely change her life. From a worried parent to a natural vengeful foreseen, Sharon Mitchell was going to discover that sometimes the people you lessen have more influence than you might possibly conceive. Have you ever experienced prejudice due to the way you click the subscribe button right now and tell others about your experience? As Jessica stood at the counter with her hands shaking, hoping that this might inspire someone, extracted all of the identification she had with her, including her Westfield Preparatory School ID. Academy, holding a happy picture of her birth certificate, which her mother had meticulously laminated years prior, statements for her savings account from the same bank, which show withdrawals and contributions dating back 3 years. Jessica, please, she pleaded, spreading these documents on the counter as if she were putting down cards in a game where her freedom was at risk. Shaking in despair, take a look at them. They demonstrate who I am, demonstrate that I have this money. But Sharon Mitchell regarded those documents with the same gaze that someone might have while examining trash. She shook her head without even picking them up to give them a thorough inspection. Contempt, and spoke the words that would ultimately determine her own demise, which are most likely additionally, a 13-year-old without a job shouldn't have this much money unless snatched it from someone. And that's when Jessica shattered. The burden of the injustice, the uncertainty, the terror, and everything fell apart. Immediately, tears began to fall from her eyes as the truth hit her. Struck her. This woman would not assist her. She had already determined Jessica's guilt before she had even pleased, said Jessica tearfully. I just want to contact my mom, so she can explain everything. But Sharon's reaction showed how deeply racist she was. She leaned forward, she shouted something so disgusting that other patrons in the vicinity actually gasped, her voice falling to a menacing whisper. I've seen this happen to individuals like you before. So it's likely that your mother brought you here to launder drug money, like you. Jessica felt as though she had been hit in the stomach once again when she was 13 years old. Discovering for the first time that some people would instantly assume the worst. Based on the color of her skin, Jessica was sobbing more and more about matters involving her and her family. Please allow me to contact her just once so I can talk through her tears. But rather than displaying even the slightest bit of human compassion, Sharon had already decided what would happen next. Sharon smiled contentedly as she grabbed for the phone to let a scared youngster contact her parents. She said loudly enough for half the bank to hear, I'm contacting the cops, saying, this girl is obviously involved in some type of crime or fraud, and I won't allow her to use crocodile tears to control me. Jessica thought she might only have one chance to get in touch with Sharon as she phoned 911. Jessica silently took out her phone with shaking fingers as Sharon was speaking with the police dispatcher, wrote as quickly as she could while crying, making it difficult to see the manager and the screen. I'm at First National Bank. Mom. Called the police on me, and she claims that I took the money. I'm afraid, but she won't allow me phone you. Just as Sharon was finishing her call and realizing what she was doing, Jessica clicked send. Sharon said, give me that phone, and sprang forward to seize it. But the message had already been sent. Moving through the city's cell towers on their way to a boardroom in a shiny skyscraper where Jessica Angela Rodriguez Williams was sitting at the mother's desk during what she believed to be another standard business meeting. Head of a huge conference table made of mahogany on the 42nd floor of the Williams. 5 of the most influential banks were seated around her in the financial group headquarters. State leaders, both men and women, who made choices that impacted thousands of people and controlled billions of dollars daily life. They were delving deeply into their quarterly assessment talking about profit margins, and when Angela's phone buzzed on the table next to her, she looked at market estimates, looked at it, and noticed that Angela had created a unique emergency contact for Jessica, whose name was shown on the screen. Always deliver, even in crucial meetings. But Angela never anticipated using it. Jessica was expected to go to the bank for what should have been a straightforward routine after being securely at school. Angela's phone rang, and she received the message that the room was full with strong executives observed the most cool and controlled lady they had ever met. Gothro, a change that was initially somewhat terrifying to see. Her expression changed to one of bewilderment as she attempted to comprehend what she was reading. As the meaning faded, perplexity gave way to astonishment, which in turn changed into a far more hazardous state of utter frigid wrath. The temperature in that Tangela's face turned into a mask of controlled rage as the boardroom appeared to plummet by 10 degrees, which caused everyone at the table to involuntarily recline in their seats. "Gentlemen," Angela remarked in a voice she was so calm and collected that it was scarier than if she had yelled, "This meeting is over." Someone had just made the fatal error of getting up so quickly that her chair slid back and struck them. 5 executives, men and women who were accustomed to being the most significant individuals in any room, abruptly appeared on the wall. Felt little and quite anxious. "Ma'am, is everything okay?" Thomas inquired. Angela was already approaching Chen, the senior vice president who had been delivering the quarterly figures. Someone at first saw her vehicle keys materialize in one hand and her phone in the other. The stillness that followed my daughter's detention by National Bank was deafening. Everyone in the room was well aware of Angela Rodriguez Williams' identity. Regarding her family's banking business, they were aware of her own wealth, and they all became aware at once that First National had just committed what may be the most costly error in banking history. Angela was clicking her heels while quickly calling numbers, like gunshots hitting the marble floor. First, according to her personal lawyer, David Chun, her head of security at the time was Robert Torres, a former police captain and one of the state's most feared attorneys. Finally, after 15 years of defending the Rodriguez family, a number that she hardly ever the direct line to Charles Morrison is utilized but always maintained nearby. As she entered the elevator, she yelled to her driver, James, the chairman of First National Bank's board of directors, "Bring the car around, we're going to First National Bank." Back at the bank, Jessica was experiencing the worst fear that any parent could have when 2 policemen showed up. Minutes of Sharon's call, and they had predetermined their plans when they entered the building. Attempting to locate 15-year veteran, Officer Bradley Walsh, who came up, Jessica was sobbing at the customer service desk, and his fellow officer Maria Santos stood close by. But none of them appeared to be interested in after listening to Jessica's version of events. "This female was attempting to deposit what I consider to be stolen funds," Sharon clarified with evident joy. "She has no legitimate explanation for where she got it, and she's been behaving suspiciously since she walked in here." Jessica attempted to talk while crying, saying, "Officers, please allow me to explain everything. This is all of my money. I just wanted to create a checking account using my identity." "But Officer Walsh, we receive calls about kids like this all the time," he replied, without looking at her. Disdainfully, "Young individuals who steal, run drugs, or do anything else always have some tale to tell about real money." Jessica was shocked by what she was. Ron had said that she was beginning to hear children like this. Realized that this was about a racist bank manager, not just one system that was made to discriminate against those who resembled her. Jessica pleaded, "Just take a look at you may confirm my identity by going to Westfield Prep, where my mother banks. Anything." But Officer Santos was already there, and the cops showed little interest in verifying. She pulled out her handcuffs and said, "Turn around and put your hands behind your back." Jessica froze, and I wondered why I hadn't. Officer Walsh said, "If you do anything wrong, you're being held on suspicion of theft and fraud. Actually, you may tell your narrative of how the handcuffs clicked around at the station." When Jessica's wrists made a noise that seemed to reverberate throughout the bank lobby, other patrons halted what they were doing, and other people took out their phones and began filming an old woman next to the "This is wrong" teller window said, shaking her head, but no one moved forward to assist. But no one insisted that the cops take their time and do a thorough investigation before making an arrest. Jessica, a 13-year-old girl, was receiving yet another harsh lesson about how the world operated. That even if they knew anything was wrong, most individuals would rather remain silent and safe than speak up for justice. When the cops escorted Jessica in handcuffs to the door, Sharon with a contented smile on her face, Mitchell stood behind her counter, having just shielded her bank from a juvenile criminal who she was unaware had realistically ruined her own career and perhaps her future. However, a natural force was moving toward her from across town, and Angela Rodriguez Williams was in the back seat. Seeing her driver, James's Bentley, making calls that would alter everything, was maneuvering through traffic as if he were operating an ambulance. while Angela's security head was in the passenger seat. Was already in contact with the bank's board of directors to ensure that Sharon Mitchell received the precise amount should he. So you'd best click the subscribe button now, because the retaliation that will follow will be total incredible. 23 minutes after Jessica's frantic text message, Jesleek, black Bentley with unusual features appeared outside First National Bank. Darkly tinted windows that appeared to be mirrors at the curb, yet this was a premium vehicle, and the registration plate said RFH1. Representing Rodriguez Financial Holdings, and those letters would have been familiar to anybody working in banking. The automobile door opened instantly, and Dr. Angela Rodriguez Williams got out. She walked down the street wearing a suit that was custom-tailored and cost $10,000 of Italian money. More than most people's automobiles, her jewelry was simple yet elegant, and the craftsmanship suited her like armor. But she had the assurance that comes only from familial riches and was obviously costly. Total authority, but Angela wasn't alone herself. David Chen, one of the state's most dreaded lawyers, a guy whose hourly rate exceeded the monthly wage of most individuals, followed by Robert Tawes, a former police captain and her head of security, whose presence instantly inspired reverence. And lastly, there were two more security guards who appeared capable of managing any eventuality. Customers who had been conducting their regular business inside the bank abruptly halted and gazed, sensed the change in the environment as if the air pressure had altered before to a storm. And people naturally fledged the manner in which this influential group, including the police, approached the entrance. Officers who had taken Jessica into custody looked anxiously at the door. Examined her heels as she entered through those glass doors with the authoritative bearing of someone who owned everything. Conversations ceased as the marble floor clicked in a pattern reminiscent of the countdown to Judgment Day. Sharon Mitchell stood behind her customer service desk, still enjoying the moment. As the phones were down, in what she believed to be her triumph, she had managed to get rid of what she thought was causing trouble at her bank, and she was hoping that her supervisors would commend her for being watchful. But when, despite Angela's photo, Sharon didn't know who she was looking at when she looked up and saw her coming. For years, Sharon had seen that face in business, in financial periodicals, but she had never associated it with Jessica. Angela Rodriguez was well known in the banking industry as a strong CEO, but the images were never informal. They were always business-related. HEADSHOTS. Angela, her daughter, seldom appeared in family portraits. She went straight to Sharon's counter. Her black eyes focused on when the mom who had the audacity to hurt her kid spoke. Her voice was so calm and controlled that it was really scarier than if she had been yelling, "Release my daughter." Sharon instantly glanced up at this blatantly affluent woman and experienced a moment of bewilderment, but her conceit soon overcame her, and she truly displayed daring. "I don't know who you think you are, lady, but your daughter Ash was attempting to deposit stolen funds. So I followed my instructions perfectly, and the police have already after removing her." Angela took a business card out of her handbag, but this business card wasn't your typical one. It was printed on thick stock paper, with gleaming gold writing. Put it on the counter, just in front of Sharon, as carefully as if it were a chess piece. "I'm Dr. Angela Rodriguez Williams. Checkmate," she said. "My family is Rodriguez Financial Holdings. We don't know each other," he stated quite calmly. Sharon took the business card and studied it, and for the first time, a spark appeared. "Just bank here, Sharon, we own here." Her expression changed to one of skepticism as she said, "But surely this couldn't be." The name Rodriguez was legendary in banking circles. Angela's smile was icier. "I don't understand." Sharon stumbled. "The girl's name is Williams, not Rodriguez. Afterward, my married name is Williams, and you are Winterwind Rodriguez. My maiden name, the granddaughter of the guy who established this bank 8 decades ago, was just detained." Sharon's face started to lose color as the realization of how big her era was dawning on her. But Angela wasn't complimented, she was just beginning. 60% of Rodriguez Financial Holdings with every word my family says. First National Bank. Angela's voice gets louder and more authoritative. Had every promotion you've ever had. Since 1943, when you were the dominant shareholder, every benefit you've ever had, every salary you've ever cashed, everything came by now. A mob had collected around the customer service desk, funded by my family's money. Counter as a result of the disturbance. Additional bank workers began coming out of their offices. Clients were taking out their phones to capture what was obviously going to be a spectacular altercation. At this moment, David Chen, Angela's lawyer, came up. "Miss Mitchell, are you aware that giving a youngster birthday money is suspicious?" "Are you really saying that?" Prior to Sharon being able to answer the primary question, racial profiling is a federal offense. The bank's doors reopened, and First National's board of directors, Chairman Charles Morrison, essentially entered the building. He was a well-known guy in his 70s who had been in charge of the Rodriguez family after more than 25 years of banking interests. Morrison looked at Angela and saw the seriousness of the situation right away, and as he got closer to he spoke, a little breathless. As the crowd gathered around Sharon's counter, Angela, I arrived as soon as I received your call, despite his haste to be there. Where is Jessica? Does she find it offensive that the head of the bank hurried in and called Angela by her first name with such evidence? The mob of observers was shocked by familiarity, and Sharon felt her legs weaken as she Charles Angela answered in a voice that suggested she could be in more difficulty than she had ever thought, becoming a little softer while speaking to the family friend that your staff here accused me of money laundering and theft victim's 13-year-old daughter, who wouldn't allow Jessica phone me and wouldn't let me check her identify, and instead contacted law enforcement to have her taken into custody. Morrison turned to face Sharon with a glare that Sharon tried to defend herself, but her voice was cut off. What a terrible thing you did. Seemed as no more than a whisper. Sir, I was only following the proper procedure for any questionable conduct. The girl had a lot of money and without a good reason, with Angela interrupting her when her voice rose. She revealed to you that it was birthday money from her grandma, and she showed you her recognizing her educational documents and her savings account statements from this particular bank. What more justification did you provide? Morrison was already phoning to request that security video be evaluated right away, and in a matter of minutes, everyone was seeing the bank's cameras on a monitor that had pulled out of the security office, and the video was incriminating. Jessica smiles as she enters the bank, walks courteously up to Sharon's counter, and shows her paperwork in a kind manner. It demonstrated Sharon turning angry right away and declining to look at Jessica's identity and showing her clear disdain from the start, but more significantly, the video displayed instance after case of further encounters Sharon has had in the previous few months, of Sharon providing minority clients more attention and requesting documents that she didn't need. My gosh, Morrison said, from white customers and treating people of color with obvious suspicion and hostility. How long has this been going on? Sharon, he saw the proof of systemic prejudice unfold on the screen. However, Sharon was unable to respond as she watched in terror as her career collapsed in front of her on the monitor. Every racial presumption, biased judgment, every instance of discrimination was visible to all. Angela turned to Morrison, and her voice was steely. I'm curious how many since other clients have received same treatment. I demand a thorough inquiry into this woman's behavior. Began right once, and Morrison coldly nodded. It'll be done. I cannot even begin to express my regret for what transpired here today. Angela, it is just unacceptable. However, Angela wasn't seeking forgiveness. Rather, she sought justice. Morrison had responded. Where is my daughter now? She's been taken to the juvenile detention center for processing. Removing his phone, but I can have her released right away, and I'll make a direct contact to the police head. Angela went back to Sharon while Morrison made his calls, who was now clearly trembling behind her counter. The situation's irony was heartbreaking. Sharon had worked her way up at a bank owned by the same family she had just assaulted for 20 years. Are you aware that Sharon is the most heartbreaking aspect of this? Angela whispered softly. My daughter has lived in a safe environment and has never seen prejudice before today. She entered this bank with total protection from individuals like you, confidence in the system, thinking that she would get fair treatment if she was kind and truthful. Sharon attempted to speak, but Angela said, you imparted a lesson that prevented her from speaking today. 13-year-old girl who will be despised by others due to her skin tone regardless of how well-educated, kind, or legitimate she will never be able to relearn her business. The security officers who had been summoned to accompany Sharon out of the building were the same individuals who had observed Jessica being. The irony of being handcuffed earlier was not missed on anyone in attendance. Your employment with First National Bank is terminated immediately. Security, stated Ms. Mitchell Morrison in an official statement, will take you out of the building and prohibit you from all bank properties for good. Sharon was escorted out of the premises in shame. Angela went to speak to the group of patrons and staff who had seen the entire altercation, saying, let this should serve as a lesson to everyone present. She added, her voice echoing throughout the bank. Racism isn't only immoral, terrible business, costly, and in this instance, merely a consommation throughout their career. But Angela's narrative wasn't over yet. To reach her daughter, who was sitting in a correctional facility, perhaps scared and perplexed by how her easy journey had your trip to the bank become such a nightmare. What would you have done if you had been Angela? Tell us in the comments if your daughter was wrongfully arrested, and remember to hit the subscribe button for additional updates. Situations like this, Sharon's dismissal had an immediate and completely dismissed. Security officers were already dispersing within 30 minutes of Chairman Morrison's declaration. 20 years worth of collected personal belongings and family pictures from Sharon's workplace achievement certificates and medals were carelessly thrown into cardboard boxers. Her computer password was altered, her access cards were canceled, and though the employment directory had removed the name, the humiliation was only getting started. As news got out, bank staff members who had known Sharon for years started to recall situations they had not noticed before, how she would joke about certain clients, how she seems to need more proof from people of color at all times. The subtle but recurring pattern of everyone had observed discrimination, but nobody had the courage to speak out about it. Within 2 hours, the banking industry had destroyed Sharon's professional reputation. By the conclusion of that first day, news spreads quickly through professional networks, and the sector is shockingly modest. By the end of the week, news of Sharon's dismissal and its reasons had reached banks throughout the state. Organizations around the country were well aware of what Sharon Mitchell had done to Jessica Williams. The story was whispered at banking conferences as a warning. With workshops on professional growth, Sharon's name became well-recognized. Asher LinkedIn page originally outlined all the issues with institutional racism in the financial services industry. With 2 decades of consistent progress across a range of roles, it now boldly displayed a gap that any prospect without an explanation the employer would comprehend. But Sharon's penalty was just the police officers who had detained Jessica marked the start of the structural reforms that would result from her case. Found themselves under the most rigorous examination of their surroundings without carrying out any genuine research. Bradley Walsh, a 15-year veteran and careers officer, had taken pleasure in his rapid response times and decisive action, learned that without fairness and justice, speed and decisiveness meant nothing. His body camera footage was examined, frame by frame, as part of a comprehensive inquiry. Officer Maria Santos exposed a pattern of presumptions and prejudices that his superiors could no longer overlook. Had actually placed Jessica in handcuffs. She was confronted with inquiries about why she had never requested to view the records. Jessica persisted in attempting to explain why she had taken Sharon's claims at face value. Accusations without evidence. Why had she attended to a third who was crying? Both cops were suspended, awaiting a trial for being ruthless. Criminals. Comprehensive internal affairs inquiry. That would go into not just this occurrence but all of their previous 5 years. The arrests of minority suspects, their cases were examined for instances of racial prejudice, and the wording in their reports was carefully examined for any show bias. And their training records were reviewed to determine whether they had overlooked important instruction about implicita. Investigations, findings on racism, and community policing were alarming. Compared to his white colleagues, Patton's officer, Walsh had arrested almost 3 times as many black suspects, even though he worked in the same communities. Officer Santos had assaulted. The results showed that minority suspects were convicted far more frequently than white suspects in comparable circumstances. Do you believe that there is a clear illustration of systematic prejudice that cannot be disregarded any longer? Was the penalty meted out to Sharon and the officer sufficient, or should there have been more repercussions for their actions? Jessica, please share your opinions in the comments section, as the last chapter of this account will demonstrate the long-term effects of the events that transpired in that bank on the day the police. The way the department handled Jessica's case turned into a lesson in what not to do. They neglected to confirm basic information while answering calls involving kids and persons of color. After hearing Jessica's explanation, you instantly chose an adult's opinion above a child's due to racial bias. The public's wrath was based on preconceived notions and preconceptions regarding economic status. Community organizations that had been protesting police racism for years now had a golden opportunity to the fact that Jessica is an example of how the system failed young people of color come from an affluent household just served to emphasize how much terrible it must be for kids without strong parents. Activists, the police department was compelled to enact significant improvements in a matter of weeks. Officers were compelled by procedure to carry out in-depth investigations prior to making arrests, particularly when minors were every 6 months participating. Police were required to finish increased bias training. Months' worth of body camera footage would be examined at random to look for indications of discriminatory conduct. And most crucially, a civilian oversight body was set up to look into racial profiling charges. In the meantime, Chairman Morrison was putting in 18-hour days to fix the harm done to First National Bank's image and put modifications that would stop such occurrences from ever occurring again. As he was aware of, the Rodriguez families had to demonstrate that this was a unique incident and not typical of the bank in order to maintain ownership. The institution's ideals. The modifications were thorough and prompt in every way. Every employee, from senior executives to part-time tellers, had to finish 40 hours of bias training. Within 60 days, the training contained more than simply boring online lessons. It also featured role-playing games based on actual events and in-person conversations, unconscious prejudice, and providing exceptional customer service. New procedures were designed especially to cater to youthful clients who would not. Members were instructed to understand that they should no longer be immediately treated with mistrust due to their age. Teens from varying socioeconomic situations may have justifiable motives for carrying cash or earning huge deposits. But more significantly, the bank made it a rule that no client younger than the 18th of May rejected service or filed a report without the consent of 2 or more managers, and without supporting documentation, of particular policy infractions. But the most significant shifts were taking place in the Rodriguez family's longest 20 minutes of Jessica's private chats occurred during the journey home from the juvenile detention facility. Jessica gazed out the window, observing the familiar scenes from Angela's life. Communities go by, attempting to comprehend how her secure, predictable life has abruptly become so complex, and Jessica eventually spoke the terrifying word, Mom, hardly raising her voice beyond a whisper. Why did, even though I had never met her before, that woman despises me so much? I was courteous when Angela's fists clenched on the driving wheel, and I had all my paperwork. Wheel, as she searched for the appropriate words to describe something that she herself still couldn't understand. How can you explain to a third that she would be hated by others for something as trivial as her skin tone? Bringing the vehicle to the side of the road so that baby Angela could give what occurred to you today had nothing to do with anything you did or did not do, and this conversation gave me the attention it deserved. Did the woman assume anything about you because of the color of your skin? Those racism, and it's terrible, incorrect, but it's a reality. Jessica turned to face her mother, her face marked with hurt and uncertainty, all over her face. Yet we're wealthy, live in a great home, and I attend a decent. This was the moment Angela had been dreading for 13 years, even if school doesn't really matter. Jessica spent her entire life attempting to shield her kid from the terrible truths of she had meticulously constructed a world where Jessica would be evaluated based on her character, despite prejudice and persecution, and accomplishments, as opposed to her ethnicity or family's money. But that bubble has suddenly been burst. And Angela understood that. Jessica could have been more vulnerable as a result of her protection. Frank, sweetheart, Angela began, inhaling deeply. I must tell you, one significant aspect of our family is that we have far more money than most people could possibly imagine. Imagine if Angela spent the next 2 hours sitting in that car by the side of the road, explaining all that her great-grandfather founded the Rodriguez banking dynasty in the 1940s. Given their present $2.8 billion net worth, the family's ownership of control and generous in scores of other financial organizations nationwide, not only First National Bank, Jessica discovered that her cozy middle-class existence had been purposefully designed to conceal the truth about her. Considering the family's enormous wealth and influence, the tiny home was really only one of the family-owned 7 properties, and private board meetings counterbalanced the public school functions Angela attended. Where she made choices that had an impact on millions of consumers and thousands of staff. Overwhelmed by these disclosures, Jessica questioned, why didn't you tell me? Angela leaned over and took her, feeling a little betrayed by the deceit, the daughter's hands. Because I wanted you to initially cultivate your own personality. It wanted you to know the importance of diligence, compassion, and modesty before you learnt about responsibility. I believed I was shielding you from the demands and expectations that come with our family's position. Quite wealthy, but I now understand that I could have prepped you for the actual world. Jessica was silent for a while as she assimilated what she had learned. She looked down at their clasped hands and thought, so we could have stopped what happened. Yes, responded Angela decisively, and we did stop it, but more importantly, today, we're going to ensure that other children who lack our advantages don't experience it. That discussion in Thudamobile signaled the start of Jessica's journey from a secluded adolescent to a youthful activist with a distinct intention. She read as much as she could throughout the course of the following few weeks regarding economic fairness, civil rights, and the history of financial discrimination that taught her about predatory loans, redlining, and the many methods that racial inequity has been sustained via the usage of banking institutions. But Jessica also gained knowledge about the value of employing advocacy and the effectiveness of opportunity to defend the Rodriguez family. Within a month after her arrest, the foundation unveiled a significant new project aimed at educating youth about their financial rights and offer assistance to families that experience prejudice when using the program. That the broad and all-encompassing initiative known as Financial Justice for All comprised teens should attend instructional sessions regarding their rights while creating accounts or doing financial transactions. Sponsored neighborhood organizations that provide legal assistance to families that experience prejudice. Promoted financial awareness in underprivileged areas, and set up a hotline for youth to call. Could give them a call if they received care akin to what Jessica had. Jessica became the campaign's spokesperson, telling her tale in front of the school community centers and youth groups around the state. Her message was straightforward, but when performing lawful business, every young person should be treated with respect and decency, regardless of their age, color, or economic status. The reaction was thousands upon thousands of youths come forward to share their own stories of unjust treatment and prejudice. Many people have just come to expect subpar service or dubious treatment as the usual. In the meanwhile, National Bank was putting into practice their realization that they had rights and advocates who would fight for them first. Modifications that would serve as a template for banking institutions nationwide. Simple bias training was only one aspect of the new youth-friendly policy. The bank changed the way it provided customer care, especially for younger customers, realizing that while learning to navigate financial institutions, young people may require more time and direction to work only with clients under the age of 18. Professional youth experts were employed and educated. Recognized that teens may ask questions that adults find simple, that they should receive the same degree of professional attention because they may be anxious about their first banking interactions. Service. As any adult client, the bank also produced instructional resources. These resources, which were created especially for teens creating their first accounts, provided an explanation of banking jargon. Described the rights of customers and gave precise instructions on what paperwork was required for each kind of transactions. But more significantly, they set up explicit guidelines to stop any client from being viewed with distrust or animosity because of their looks or presumed financial standing. But maybe the story's most impactful incident occurred precisely 1 week following Sharon's dismissal, when Angela stood in the main lobby of First National Bank, where her daughter had gone to speak to the remaining employees, been degraded, and taken into custody while displaying the same dominant demeanor that has gathered all of the workers to recount stories, which basically destroyed Sharon's career. Administrative staff, managers, and security officers gathered in anxious quiet as Angela got ready to talk with the knowledge that their employment and the bank's future may be dependent on what Sharon marked after that. My family created wealth in this nation in spite of individuals like Sharon attempting to halt us, Angela said, her voice echoing loudly around every corner of the structure. My great-grandfather began with unwavering resolve and the conviction that everyone should have access to financial services regardless of skin, color or area from whence they had come. She stopped to survey the space. Maintaining eye contact with certain workers as she went on. He experienced open and lawful discrimination. When he was practicing, banks would not service him, and loan agents would tell him to hiss despite the fact that they didn't conduct business with him. He persisted. Eventually, he established his own bank that would fairly serve everyone by working twice as hard and saving every dime. 3 generations later, her voice became more powerful as she warmed to her topic. When her daughter entered the bank that her great-great-grandfather had helped establish, she was given the same treatment as if it weren't so awful. The irony of someone who was paid with my family's money committing a crime would be absurd. There was complete silence in the room as Angela went on. Joss will learn from this. Discover that we have the authority to demand respect, which is not provided at IT. But more significantly, she will discover that power entails utilizing it to defend those without it. Local news teams videotaped Angela's remarks and uploaded it to the internet, where it swiftly gained popularity, millions of times turning into a call to action for civil rights and economic development. But for Angela, it wasn't about whether it was popularity or notoriety. The goal was to prevent another kid from experiencing what Jessica had. The speech also acted as a stark warning to anybody who might be lured to work in the financial services sector, to participate in discriminatory activities. The message was clear, as the Rodriguez family watched. They knew they had the means to defend themselves and weren't scared to use their influence. 3 months later, Jessica went back to First National Bank to finally open that account and seek justice. She had first come for a bank account, but this time she wasn't simply Ash. Was a young woman who recognized her privilege and was attempting to demonstrate her independence as a sheltered 13-year-old. Her duty, who had gained a harsh understanding of the inequities in the world, who also learned how to fight against them, and the staff gave her nat with the highest professionalism and respect. But Jessica made it apparent that she expected the same. She had discovered that having power meant treating every young consumer who entered those doors with respect, utilizing it to safeguard those who lacked the benefits of the account creation procedure that need to have taken 15 minutes, but the initial completion took less than 5 minutes. Jessica was personally introduced to her and given a welcome packet made, especially for young clients, adolescent expert, and a comprehensive breakdown of all the resources she may access. The banking industry was Sharon Mitchell's last and irrevocable collapse. Her tail followed her wherever she looked for a new job, thanks to the unofficial networks in the business. Insurance companies, financial services organizations, and other associated industries were fully aware of her actions and the reasons behind them. Sharon learned after being dismissed that one's professional reputation is crucial, and once it's damaged, she was forced to work a string of low-paying retail jobs, each one being very hard to restore. Unpleasant reminder of the profession she had abandoned due to her personal bigotry and hatred. But maybe the most appropriate, Sharon was made to observe from a distance as the banking business she had been ejected from as part of her punishment went through the exact adjustments that, had she accepted them sooner, may have preserved her career. every article on inclusive customer service, and every news report about bias training, every accolade First National Bank got for its forward-thinking initiatives served as a reminder. What she may have participated in had she made a different decision, as well as Sharon's potential to return to bank, but her narrative had developed into a potent bias training teaching tool. Nationwide initiatives that demonstrate the practical repercussions of prejudice and discrimination. If you liked this story, please subscribe and tell others about it so they may learn. We hope to see you at our future event.